the bard known as Black Bart. All right, Black Bart is not buried here, but bad poetry, so it's going to fit him in anyway. This is Black Bart. He was a famous stagecoach bandit in the gold country, Calaveras, Shasta, up there, who seemed to have a thing for Wells Fargo lockboxes. Now, according to the reports, he was an elderly gentleman who always treated everyone kindly, gently, never shot anyone, never hurt anyone, never beat anyone like some of the highwaymen of that period. And he soon became a folk hero, because he was targeting the Wells Fargo, and also because he was leaving poems behind. And he signed his poems Black Bart, the P.O.8. P.O.8 poet. And he left scraps of poetry behind in the lockboxes for the Wells Fargo men. And this is only 2 confirmed ones. And this is his most famous one. I've labored long for, I've labored long and hard for bread, for honor and for riches. But on my corns too long you've trod, you fine-haired sons of bitches. When captured, Black Bart was an elderly gentleman called Charles Bowles, who no one suspected of being Black Bart. He was an educated, cultured gentleman. And the Wells Fargo's records office suffered a fire, so there may be more poems, but there's only 2 that we have that are confirmed. The other one goes, here I lay me down to sleep, to wait the coming morrow, perhaps success, perhaps defeat, and everlasting sorrow. Let come what will, I'll try it on, my condition can't be worse, and if there's money in that box, 'tis money in my purse. But he inspired many others to write their own poems at that time period, and even actually up in the town of Duncan Mills had a Black Bart doggerel poetry contest in the 90s, or 1990s. But in the 1880s, when he got out of prison, he was rumored to have picked up his old profession again, and a bunch of new poems came out. And one of them was, I robbed the rich to feed the poor, which hardly is a sin. A widow never knocked on my door, but what I let her in. So blame me not for what I've done. I don't deserve your curses. And if for any cause I'm hung, let it be for my verses. and the last one, the Imitation Black Bart poem, is another somewhat famous one. Lo, here I've stood while wind and rain have set the trees a-sobbing, and risked my life for that damn stage that wasn't worth the robbing. We're in a nice shady spot, so we can just stay right here. But right behind us in that pink monument that's sticking up, the second one back, let's see, 1, 2, 3 plots there, that's John Larkin. And he was an editor and publisher of the Sunday News Leader, which was a weekly paper that he edited for about 30, 40 years, and then his son for another dozen after that, 1880, 1920 era. And of course, one of the perks of being a newspaper editor is you get to write an editorial and rant about whatever you want to, which of course he did. And he was talking about the horrible condition of this is editorial of the horrible condition of the city court, which was in Old Sac, right next to the rail yards turnaround, very noisy, and next to the waterworks, or in the waterworks, right? And this is what he had to say. This is about the limit of endurance. I have seen several dirty courtrooms in my experience in this world, but this police court of Sacramento has them all beaten a mile. Why, the microbes can be seen playing football any morning around the courtroom floor, and various animals, too numerous to mention, can be seen at their play, just as though there were no clerks, judges, city attorneys, or other unfortunate city officials to come down here and work their heads off in a din and confusion typical of a boiler room. The noise of jangling engine bells, shunting boxcars, and a gang of trainmen shouting themselves hoarse is enough to drive an ordinary man crazy, without adding the stench of tobacco juice, which is on the courtroom floor 3 inches deep or less, and dirty old seats and tables with the accumulated dust of ages gathered thereon. If there is anything that will cause the taxpayers of Sacramento to hearken unto the voice of conscience and vote for a bond issue for a new city hall, let us get busy and work on their feelings a little, and incidentally their pocketbooks. I doubt if there is a taxpayer in the city who would not be glad to be taxed for a new city hall. Now, for heaven's sake, in our own, let's have the hall. Apparently he didn't know Sacramento very well. Yeah.
Where was the hall?
It was part of the city waterworks, which would have been right at the foot of J Street, or yeah, where the Discovery, where the Railroad Museum and the Discovery History Museum are. That was kind of the hub at that time period. Sorry?
It had moved out of the Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo, I think it was maybe. That was probably later. But yeah, I know that the Waterworks building had the jail and courts and everything, and it was right next to the the train works, where, like he's talking about. What? The state Supreme Court was above the Wells Fargo building. That's what that was. Yeah. All right. The Pioneer plot has a number. This plot right behind us here is the Pioneer plot. Everybody here, town founders, a lot of them, they all came here in 1849. They're not allowed to be here unless they were 49ers. There was one guy who's there was a storm and he couldn't get from his ship to shore until the morning of January 1st, 1850. And they said, no, you don't get in here, sorry, only 49. And we have a lot of newspaper editors, and one of them is James McClatchy, who is buried over to the right of the big Mark Hopkins Memorial here. And since we're all happy in the shade, let's just stay here. And I'll tell you about James McClatchy. But you may know something about him already. The McClatchy name is one that we've usually heard. The McClatchys, I think they started the B.S. McClatchy, James McClatchy, and then C.K. McClatchy after him were editors of the B. This is James McClatchy, rather severe looking photo of him. And I'm going to read a quote from C.K. McClatchy's book, Private Thinks by C.K. And this is the B Cardinal Rules as prepared by James McClatchy and expanded by C.K. McClatchy for the guidance of the editorial staff of the B. Now this wouldn't be poetry, this would probably fit in the purple prose section. The B demands of all its writers accuracy before anything else. Better lose an item than make a splurge one day and correct it the next. Equally with that, it demands absolute fairness in the treatment of news. Reports must not be colored to please a friend or wrong an enemy. Don't exaggerate. Every exaggeration hurts immeasurably the cause it pretends to help. If a mistake is made, it must be corrected. It is as much the duty of a B writer to work to the rectification of a wrong done by an error in an item, as it is first to use every precaution not to allow that error to creep in. Be extremely careful of the name and reputation of women, even when dealing with an unfortunate. Remember that so long as she commits no crime other than her own sin against chastity, that she is entitled at least to pity. Sneers at race or religion or physical deformity will not be tolerated. dago, mick, sheeny, even chink or jap. These are absolutely forbidden. This rule of regard for the feelings of others must be observed in every avenue of news, under any and all conditions. There is a time for humor, and there is a time for seriousness. The bee likes snapping ginger at all times, but will not tolerate flippancy on serious subjects on any occasion. So it's nice to know they're sensitive about race. All right, let's see. We're going to move on down this way to the left and go see Crazy back in the Pioneer plot. The Pioneers were very patriotic, and they put on 4th of July celebrations a lot. And one of their favorite writers was Alonzo Delano, who is buried in Grass Valley. And he was a writer. He wrote Across the Plains. Is that, Tom, you know what I'm talking about. He wrote several books that were mostly collections of his columns, which were very much in that folksy Mark Twain humor kind of thing. And the Pioneers just loved him to death. They had him on the 4th of July celebrations speaking. And back then, they liked speaking. They liked to go, maybe 4th of July, they might see a patriotic speech. The guy might talk for an hour and a half. And they might see another guy who would talk for another hour. They liked that. You know, it didn't have even basic cable back then. Anyway, so Alonzo Delano had a character known as Old Block that he would usually write in, who was, you know, down-home hick kind of character, everyman. And this is about him deciding it's time to get serious and get hitched. Well, and this is his mother, I think, telling him, "Well, you varmint, it's time you had a wife, and you shall, rheumati or no rheumati, ye shall get married." The old woman's grit will rise, and you might as well try to catch a thunderbolt in a leaky gourd as put a woman off when her dander's up. I was bound to be a victim. I skip over 3 days and nights of the orphalest feelings, boys, but I finally made up my mind to go into it as a lamb to the slaughter. And then Mother got cooled down again. On the 4th night, I slipped into them yeller jean pants that come even almost down to my ankles and flop about at the bottom like a rag on a beanpole. Didn't that calico vest and pepper and salt wamis all fringed around the cape, cuffs and bottom with red urine fringe that the old woman made herself look elegant? And then new cowhides with about a pound of deer's collar on them, and my coonskin cap with the tail brought over the top. Take the shine off any everlasting weasel-faced, hair-and-legged, pucker-mouthed, bewhiskered dandy in Sacramento. Whoop, boys. Weren't I a roarer? Get out of the way, I'm coming myself. Gals in the settlement, look out. I'll rise again like a dead possum. I'm going trapping for a gal. And then he finds one later on that seems to be agreeable and tells her, "Betsy, I feel as though I could lift the world. I'm dead in love with you, and if you only go in cahoot with me in the cabin fixings and the plantation ground, I'll give up coon hunting, gal hunting, and all other hunting except happiness hunting. And you and me will settle down for life like 2 tame turkeys over a pigsty. Will you go the caper?" What do you think she said, boys? Not one word. She stood a moment like a deer stunned with a buckshot, then burst into tears and gave me her hand. Women. All right, yeah, there's tons of that stuff. It's Old Block's sketchbook. That's what this is from. But there's other stuff that's out there that's actually you can check out from the library, I think. And let's see. Here, let's do that one. Dr. B. Okay. So in 1853, this is Vincent, by the way.
Hi, Vincent.
Vincent, down through Brand New. There might be a resemblance there, you might notice. In 1853, initial street improvements began with plank roads being constructed in the downtown area, but the majority of the streets were in a sad state. At a certain Sacramento pothole, actually close by, but this area was way out in the boonies back in the 1850s. There was posted, some wag left the following warning.
This road is not passable.
Not even jackassable.
When that you travel.
Pray bring your own gravel. And then a little further down the road at another pothole we find this parody of that.
This hole is not crossable.
No, not even horseable.
So try not to went it.
Or else you'll repent it. So poetry was everywhere, bad or otherwise. And and this lady here in this fabulous corner monument is known as Crazy Mary. Mary Woolcott Green, blah, blah. She was married like 4 times, and I think maybe 1 common law. She was a spiritualist. She was paranoid, probably paranoid schizophrenic. She had a very colorful life. Early on, she was a prostitute. Later on, she married and ran a hotel and owned the hotel. Married a guy and made him sign an agreement saying that the hotel belonged to her and it was her property at a time that was unusual. And she divorced her husband when she thought that he was trying to poison her so that the Catholics could take over the hotel. Anyway, she wrote the epitaph for her grave, which is very sensible and not crazy at all. And if I can find it here. And this is Mary's poem. Who will come to weep above us, lying, oh, so white and still, underneath the skies of summer, when all nature's pulses thrill, to new life glad and tender, full of beauty rich and sweet, and the world is clad in splendor that the years shall e'er repeat. Who will know of white hands lying on a still and silent breast, never more to know of sighting, ever more to know of rest? Who will care? No one can tell us. But if rest and peace befall, will it matter if they miss us or miss us not at all? Not at all.